Berlin Wall would fall down. And I said, of course not. The Berlin Wall has been there for 30, 40 years, but it did fall down. And I feel the same way about the drug war. It's been around for almost 50 years, but I'm convinced that we are underway to end the drug war completely. We've been doing it step by step. It's going to take more years, but we are in the right path, and we are going to eventually finish this job. I may die before then, but somebody else will carry on the work to end the war on drugs, this war on people, et cetera, et cetera. So, no, I have ultimate faith that this is going to happen, sure.
Well, who's going to die first, Howard, you or Peter Christ, before we legalize marijuana?
well, Peter Christ had a pretty nasty heart attack a while back.
No.
Heart attack. Yeah, he did. About 8 months ago, last summer, he went down. He's doing okay.
Let's show off. He's just been talking about how he's going to die before we end the drug war for so long. He sees it coming, so he just pulled a fast one on you guys, is what he did, probably.
Could be. God bless Peter, but no,
God bless him. I love him.
Social justice is a continuum. Social justice is a continuum. We all work at it, make it a little bit better as we live, and then somebody else carries on after we are unable to carry on. But no, I have ultimate faith. Look, we've got 9 states now. Vermont just went legal. We're 9 states plus D.C. 30 have medicinal, and 46 states have CBD oil for little boys and girls with Dravet syndrome, the grand mal seizures. This is a movement which is happening. Oklahoma defelonized all drugs last year in the vote. People voted to defelonize.
That's amazing.
So now it's a maximum of 1 year in the county jail for simple possession of heroin. This is huge progress, and that's in Oklahoma, folks. You don't get any more conservative than that.
Wow. States are experimenting.
Well, people are sick and tired of their families being locked up.
Exactly.
Well, what about this, Howard?
Exactly.
It is big business. And I mean that by.
Oh yeah.
Now I know I'm seeing stats like in Seattle. I mean, like Washington State, Oregon, arrests are going down. Colorado down 80%, 70%. And that is. And what does that really mean? Does it really mean, maybe arrests are up for driving? My point is that I've been practicing laws for 24, 25 years, and some of the trends that I saw was early on the O.J. Simpson happened case, and after that, never if someone called the police someone was going to jail that night. Like before that, the police used to come out and see what was going on. They'd check, whatever, and they'd leave. But after the O.J., that was one of memorable moments in my career. Like after that, they stopped. That was a thing. Once do you remember that as a change in time where that became more of an issue?
The short answer is no, I don't. I mean, the job of the police is the same as always. One of the things that I've seen change during my time, and then especially afterwards in these last a decade or so, is police officers now expect, demand the ability to search any and every person and car they come in contact with, and it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But my profession is now so used to stopping and asking you 10 questions, and then want to search your car for drugs, and when you refuse, they're going to bring a dog out, etc. My profession is corrupted to its basic core by this particular problem, and it's going to take another generation of cops to change it. And of course, we who work in drug reform know that that's another big thing with marijuana. Once the officer can't say, "I smell marijuana, get out of your car," or "I smell marijuana on your person, it's up against the wall." This is a big deal for a lot of cops, a majority of cops, okay? And that's another reason they fight so fiercely through their industry, through their unions, to keep the war on marijuana going, because it is the linchpin to searching everything they come in contact with. And that, of course, leads to civil asset forfeitures and other abuses. Citizens are shot and killed because of the friction and the problems of getting out of your car, and then bad things happen. So that is why the FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, and the others fight marijuana legalization tooth and nail, because it is the linchpin key to keeping the drug war going and the officers getting that civil asset forfeiture money and searching everybody.
Howard, yeah, that's beautiful, and it's interesting. We're trying to author. There's a deadline that has already come past. We're working on these two different articles that kind of speak to each other. One is Michigan. The state of Michigan is now licensing by way of receiving money and encouraging people to enter into contracts, and those people and attorneys are giving advice, and the state's expected to make money from tax revenue about the interactions of a Schedule I drug, which is insane, right? I mean, going into the business of it and still being called a Schedule I. Now, and as we look at this, even the idea that, basic civil law says you can't enforce illegal contracts. So how can a lawyer give advice to a client of theirs to, sign that agreement and put that money up or invest in that building so you can engage in a Schedule I contract because that contract will be honored? You know what I mean? So this is a crazy world. And while all that's going on, and people are paying money, investing money, states getting money, also this plant can be chopped up and given to people to treat their serious disease. The Schedule I we're talking about, which is bizarre, right? And because it retains the Schedule I standing, as you mentioned, the linchpin to search every single thing they ever wanted to. Michigan law sucks. We joke, we cry. It's hard to practice criminal defense without a Fourth Amendment. What do I mean by that? Well, they smell marijuana. That's it. Yet the state authorized these individuals to make that smell, to have the snow melt on the roof, to have air conditioners and black out their windows and throw out marijuana. These are the state, but it's not an issue because marijuana remains Schedule I. It's a per se contraband. It's and I say this for shock value exclusively. It might as well be kiddie porn. You know what I mean? For purposes of if there's a sense of it being in there, we're getting in. It's so dangerous, no one can have it for any reason. Not how much. It's there's no how much you can have of kiddie porn. It's like you cannot. It's not a thing. If they're going to take you out, any judge or magistrate that hears that possibly may be there, this dangerous thing, that's how they treat marijuana. And it is absurd that these two things can be reconciled in modern era. I'm going to court arguing about affidavits that are based on, you know what I'm saying? The linchpin. I just named them. You probably got 10 more you could say that are put into the standard affidavit. Not knocking it. It's not degrading, but they're the things that are authorized by the state, yet still identified as, totality of circumstances to make out probable cause of a crime, which is presumptively valid in Michigan. Once that search warrant is issued, you're not getting into it. You're not undoing it. We got to come up with some serious. So it's just there's no Fourth Amendment as it goes. So I don't know. I think we're trying to formulate some ideas of how to undo this. It just seems absurd that the state could continue to do these. Now, what the answer to some of this is. What have some of the other states done in terms of dealing with it at the state level and scheduling and reducing it as a contraband per se? That's a good one.
Well, yeah, I'm not well versed in the state thing, but I know that the states can schedule drugs any way they wish, different from the federal government. But the most important thing to remember is that Lansing is where the laws are made, the regulations are made, and they can change it. Two things I'd like to bring to your attention of your audience is please contact your congressman, your two senators, and tell them to support 10th Amendment for marijuana and also the bill, HR 2020, to reschedule marijuana from 1 to 3. Because as you were saying about Schedule 1, once it's Schedule 3, it's a regular medicine. And then all the other legal things apply, like being able to take it off your taxes, and you can use credit cards to buy it, all the normal banking operations, etc. So it is a really big deal to do that, and it takes pressure from the grassroots. Also, if you're a gun owner, and I know Michigan, a lot of people have guns, the NRA, cheerful news, the NRA for the first time in the history of the world is thinking seriously about having a position on Second Amendment gun rights and medical marijuana patients. They're thinking about coming out with a position. So if you're an NRA member, please contact the NRA and say, please protect the gun rights of medical marijuana patients.
That's smart for them.
put the pressure on the NRA. If we can get the NRA to join hands with the American Legion, boys and girls, we can get this bill on the president's desk this year, and he will sign it. H.R. 2020.
Well, that's interesting. That's the first I've heard of that, and you would agree the NRA has been silent on that particular issue. Let me ask you this, Howard, and I don't know if you got to go, let me know. But we had a congressman before you, and I like asking the question. We know legalization is happening; it's happening all over the place. You know, how do you see it in some of these areas that are still a bit undefined? I mean, put aside how it's going to be taught to children. Like 10, 15 years from now, we're going to be telling kids that it's, you know what I mean? Like, how is that conversation? But what about like in the workplace? What about in housing where it's used, like government housing or even like renting and that issue? How tolerant are people going to have to be? What about, the issue of it being present in someone's life and it effectuating parenting or CPS involvements? Where do you see that in terms of the, this unwritten conversations of, moving forward?
That's why getting it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is so crucial. Like you said, Child Protective Services, people are losing their kids because of marijuana isn't 3 feet above the level of where kids can go, where a bottle of whiskey is no problem on the floor. Marijuana gets your kids lost. The social injustice here, as you know, is off the charts, and that's why in terms of fixing it for 50 states and all the territories, we have got to get the folks in Washington, D.C. to vote that way. And that's where, especially that because we could, as we've seen, like Colorado has already said, if feds come in, they will make every person in Colorado a patient, and they'll all get the red card, and then there won't be any recreational users. And that's a way to get around the federal government, in a sense, if we pass H.R. 2020, where they could all be patients. And so there are ways to do it, but again, the most direct route to help most people is at the federal level, which is one of the reasons I came to Washington, D.C. instead of Lansing, Michigan, or Austin, Texas, is because this is where the big things can happen.
And you think that it may not be your number one prayer for relief, let's say, but you think it's the closest one to being realized, this scheduling to a 3. Is that what you think?
Exactly. Of all the bills that might get on the president's desk this year regarding marijuana, it is H.R. 2020 that has the best shot from going from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And my analysis is it will solve a whole host of problems for millions and millions of citizens across the country.
And you say that because of the lesser penalties associated with the possession of those things or the accessibility to that drug because it's scheduled as such, in terms of, and this is really a remedy for the possession and use. Is that right? It does not.
Correct.
It doesn't create a marketplace. In fact, it probably is antagonistic to, non-pharmaceutical,
right,
whatever, involvement. Like it's going to be exclusive. Like the growers today are going to be.
Doctors will never prescribe anything that they can't consistently dose.
Where do you see the migration of the existing market when so-called markets with rescheduling to 3? That's a good question. I think. What happens?
Well, that's beyond my pay grade.
Oh.
However, when it goes to Schedule 3, this will, like California had the most robust system of medical marijuana, where essentially you could use it for any type of even minor pain, right?
correct.
So everybody in California was eligible to get a medical marijuana card, and everybody in Michigan could do the same thing. I mean, I wear cowboy boots, and my feet hurt at the end of the day. I would be eligible to use marijuana as an analgesic and an anti-inflammatory. So I would have a card. So that way you could get around the whole problem of recreational marijuana, where it's Schedule 3, it's legal, and at that point, I believe that the criminal justice system will throw in the towel, because they're not going to say you got to have your bud inside a little pharmaceutical, child-proof package, et cetera, et cetera. This will be the beginning of the end, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why I work hard every day, and so do my colleagues, to pass this bill.
You know, Howard, in Michigan, we're allowed to grow 12 plants for each person and have 2.5 ounces